One last question, and it's probably to you, Dr. Warner, and maybe you, Dr. Solon. As we think about the new technologies that are out there, the prospects for recycling, there's a lot of excitement and anticipation in terms of what that can yield. I have heard some suggest that we don't need to do more to access our own minerals here in this country. We don't need to make steps in that direction. We can recycle our way forward. And I'm wondering if we are, if we're being visionary enough in understanding what the demand going forward may be, so that we are taking into account the broader increases in electrification and the associated infrastructure that in the future is going to be relying on these. Can any of you give me your comments? Are we to the point where we can just rely on technology to allow us to meet this demand? Or do we need to continue to be the producer of these raw materials at the same time that we're working on the technology? Because I think there are some who believe that there is a very easy way out of this, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Senator. I think that is an excellent question where we sit now in the industry, and I don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all solution. I think that the recycling is absolutely going to be necessary with just the pure number of lithium-ion batteries coming into the end of life. But I think, and I think it could add to a significant portion of the minerals used, but I think it's going to have to be a policy that includes both the processing and the mining of natural materials and the refining of the used ones. There's new technologies happening today, such as the roll-to-roll recycling, where they're able to pull cathode materials off, reprocess those, and be able to use those. But those are still in their infancy stages. Today, most of the recycling processes will allow you to get some of the copper, some of the cobalt, and some of the rare minerals out of there through a very expensive process that uses a lot of energy going into it. But I think going into the future, as we see more and more of these batteries coming out, as we look at our cell phones, every cell phone that we've got in the room here and probably sitting in Washington, D.C. uses a lithium cobalt oxide battery. All of those cobalt, what do we do with them when we're done? How many people have one or two sitting at home in a drawer somewhere? I know I do. If we have policies which would allow us to bring those back in and do some urban recycling, that could be another source of some of these raw materials. So I think that using some of the recycling technologies, continuing to develop those recycling technologies will help supplement the need for some of the natural ones, but it will certainly help improve reduce our dependence on some of those foreign sources.
Anybody else care to weigh in? Are the minerals that we have on the list, these are the ones that we've identified for today, but again, forecasting into the future, are we going to need to be adding more to that list that we just haven't even envisioned yet? Assistant Secretary Bailash.
Well, Madam Chair, I think that's why having a periodic reassessment of the list every couple of years is really important, because over time, the market demands will change, the technology will improve, and draw on different pieces and parts of that list. So, you know, with that dynamism in mind, you know, you can't just set the list one time and that's going to be it for 20 years. It won't stand up.
Right. Dr. Sloan?
I agree with that. And one of the things that we need to take a look at is constant evaluation. You bring up a very good point, which is we really need to take a look at trying to forecast and figure out what's risky and what's not. And that's one of the things that we do at the Department of Energy. But when some of the sensitivities that we have, particularly in some of the technologies you mentioned, moving forward is how quickly is society going to electrify, and are automotive makers going to follow through on their commitments on electric vehicles? How quickly might the consumer be brought to bear in terms of choosing electric vehicles, and how quickly will battery technologies be used as storage for the grid. So these are all things that are important. That said, we constantly take a look at these issues at Department of Energy according to a specific mineral or materials importance to energy and also its supply risk. And in the past, going back in time, we actually thought that rare earth phosphors were going to be really important and had high supply risk because at that time we thought compact fluorescent bulbs would be technology moving forward and technology of the future. And lo and behold, it was not the rare earth phosphors. Now we're talking about gallium because industry's innovated, and now we have LED light bulbs that are actually penetrating the market enough to move world markets. And I'd just like to close it and talk about that, which is we have to take a look at this in terms of a global demand equation. All the different countries and companies are around the world are competing for the same things. And much of the world's growth in demand is not going to be in the United States, it's in the rest of the world or it's in Asia. So in order for us to remain competitive, we have to take a look at our own supply chain and our own production.
Very good. Dr. Zimkowicz.
One of the things we tend to overlook in this whole discussion is that markets themselves tend to be fairly elastic. And when I say that, the Washington Monument originally had an aluminum cap on it just to show the world how rich we were. Because aluminum, prior to the Hall process, was more valuable than silver. Now, once the Hall process came along, then all of that useless bauxite in the tropics became a valuable ore. Well, I think the same thing may happen with some of the rare earths and critical minerals. For example, the cheapest rare earths right now go for about $8 per kilogram, $8,000 a ton. Well, that blocks out a lot of markets. If we had the supply, if we had the low-cost processing, then all of a sudden the price goes down, but the market increases in size. So we have to keep that in mind when we're making these assessments.
Very interesting. So we've had good input here today from Department of Interior as well as Department of Energy, but I'm reminded that it's the Department of Commerce that has led the development of a strategy to reduce this country's reliance on foreign minerals. We've been waiting to see that report for months. Sorry that we haven't seen that be released yet. We certainly are looking forward to that. But again, it's just a reminder that this is kind of a whole of government approach here when we're talking about our minerals and mineral security and what that means. It's not only what Interior does with accessing them from our lands, what energy is doing to work on the technologies, but how that fits then from a broader view of commerce. So not to mention the perspective from defense, obviously very, very key to the discussion as well. So I hope that Interior and Energy, just as you have outlined today, your departments are working aggressively in this. Hopefully there's coordination with the Department of Commerce as we're talking about the broader strategy. You're nodding your head to affirm that that level of coordination is going on?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it is.
You don't say that with levels of exuberant enthusiasm, which kind of concerns me. Can you give me any insight in terms of when we might expect this from Commerce on a release? I know it's not your department, but what do you know? Okay, there's a lot of cooperation going on between the three. I won't hold you to that, but maybe I'll follow up with the folks over at Commerce and see if we can rattle some cages over there. But I thank you for the leadership that we're seeing not only within our departments but on the private sector side and in academia. This is an issue that will continue to be on my front burner in terms of priorities. I really feel like we did something extraordinarily significant when we were able to release the United States' potential when it came to reducing our vulnerability on oil by lifting the oil export ban. It was a policy that was holding us back, and it has really, truly helped make a difference when it comes to levels of vulnerability. But I fear that we are going in the same direction that we were previously with oil when it comes to minerals and our mineral security. That's not a place where I want to be. I don't think it's a place where any of us want to be. And it's going to take accessing these resources domestically. It's going to take the skilled workforce at all levels, and it's going to take the ingenuity to build out these technologies. And Dr. Zimkowitz, it's been fascinating hearing your report here today, just in terms of what cool and neat things that we are finding in places that one would never have anticipated nor expected. And just again, a reminder of the greatness that we have in so many of our learning institutions, our national labs, and the bright people that we have that are focused on these difficult issues. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for your testimony. We will look forward to advancing both the bill that I've been leading as well as Senator Manchin, and would appreciate your continued input as we move forward with these. With that, the committee stands adjourned.